So here's a belief that I have. This has nothing to do with being in real estate. It is my belief that everyone in the United States that makes more than $100,000 a year should hire a full-time virtual assistant, one full-time virtual assistant, right? And you might say, yeah, but what am I going to have them do? The answer is give yourself that as a challenge. It's only hard for the first month, and then you're going to find enormous numbers of things for them to do. My biggest challenge is I constantly have to hire new VAs because I'm running out of bandwidth. We've never had a time when VAs actually don't have things to do. So the number of things that they're doing is endless. The virtual assistants are doing reputation management for properties, calling clients that have just had a maintenance task closed and ask them to rate that maintenance task on a scale of 1 to 10. If it's anything less than 7, they're sending the maintenance guy back. If it's 8 or 9, they're thanking them. If it's 10, they're asking them to write a review on Yelp or Google. They are doing reports for every single property. They're making sure that if the project management, if the property management software, let's say Appfolio or Yardi, says that we collected $101,000 in rent, they're checking to see if the bank actually has $101,000 in rent. Guess what? 99% of the time, those two numbers don't match. Usually they're mismatched by 50 bucks, 100, 200, but that's 200 bucks the property management manager forgot to collect. So if it's 200 bucks a week, that's a huge amount of money over a 5-year time frame, right? So those sorts of tasks. Anything that comes in, I run a website called Multifamily U. It's a university, and there we have a huge number of people. We do 4 webinars a week. So one of the most common tasks is after a webinar, people email us saying, is there a recording? So I've got a one-click task setup in Outlook. There's these things called one-click tasks in Outlook that basically sends it to an Asana folder and assigns it to a person. Her name is Carolyn. So I click that 7, 8, 9 times a day, and she goes out and completes those tasks 7, 8, 9 times a day, sending those recordings out to those people. I've got virtual assistants that are making notes in meetings. You're with a property manager on a call. The property manager says, yeah, I noticed that unit 106 had these really ugly blinds. I'm going to change them by tomorrow, right? Now, the number of times or the percentage that the property manager will actually do that by tomorrow happens to be 0. He doesn't actually intend doing this. He doesn't ever going to do it. He just wants to say that on the call to make himself feel good. Our property managers don't say any such thing because roughly 2 minutes after he says it, Carolyn Kay, who's on all of our calls, is going to create an Asana task saying unit 101, blind change, and then she's going to assign tomorrow as the completion date because that's what he said, right? And then 48 hours after he forgot to do it, and now the task is read in Asana because it's past due, she's gently going to remind him, and then gently going to remind him again, and then gently going to remind him again. We don't blow up on our property managers, but if you've been gently reminded about a task 2 or 3 times, you're going to do that task. So imagine that happening in a 1-hour call for 11 different properties. Imagine how many tasks are created that a property manager takes on with no intention of ever actually doing them and no documentation. People talk for an hour. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go out and do this. And I think they do about 10% of those things, maybe 20, and maybe another 10 or 20% at some point in the future. But we don't want them done at some point in the future. We want them done now. And so there is documentation of every single word that comes out of a property manager or operating partner's mouth in one of our meetings. That alone adds up to thousands of tasks a year. We've got very senior VAs that actually have access to subscription docs. So our senior most VA, she's a manager at this point in time. She's been with us for 3 or 4 years. She does all of our subscription docs. So when we send out a project, we basically have people that come in and say, I want to invest 75 or 100K. She's the one making phone calls. We have a very strict system where we do not send out wire transfer instructions by email. Guess what? Email can be hacked. Email is not encrypted. So what we do is we have a 2-step system. It's basically a 2-factor authentication system, which is Julianne will send out an email to you. It'll have the wire transfer instructions, and then she will call and leave a message for you. And you as our investor has to match up the wire transfer instructions with the account number that she gave you in the phone call or in the voicemail. This is done 400 times a year. Those are examples. The list is endless. As I said, currently there are over 1,000 non-completed Asana tasks for a group of 12 virtual assistants.